The acrid scent of caffeine wafted through the air as Oren and his fellow Lurian exchange students entered the Galactic University cafeteria. Their sensitive olfactory organs twitched, instantly recognizing the potent neurotoxin that had decimated entire populations on their home planet. Panic seized them as they watched human students casually sipping the steaming, brown liquid from ceramic mugs. "Poison! They're drinking poison!" Oren shouted, his translator struggling to convey the urgency in his alien vocal cords. The Lurians' tentacle-like appendages writhed in distress as they observed what appeared to be a mass poisoning event unfolding before their eyes. Without hesitation, Oren activated his emergency communicator, alerting campus security to the dire situation. Within minutes, the cafeteria was swarming with guards and medical personnel, their faces a mix of confusion and concern. Human students looked on in bewilderment as the Lurians gesticulated wildly, attempting to explain the deadly nature of the beverage. But the language barrier proved too great, and cultural misunderstandings only served to escalate the conflict. The Lurians' translators struggled to convey the concept of a recreational neurotoxin, while Peter's attempts to explain Earth's long history with coffee fell on uncomprehending ears. As the commotion grew, campus administrators arrived on the scene. Fearing an interstellar incident that could jeopardize Earth's standing in the galactic community, they made the decision to place the entire university on lockdown. Sirens blared across the campus as students and faculty were ushered into secure locations. News of the perceived poisoning spread like wildfire. Earth's global media outlets began broadcasting live from the university gates, their headlines screaming of alien intervention and potential warfare. The incident threatened to unravel years of carefully cultivated diplomatic relations between Earth and Luria. Lurian officials, upon hearing of the situation, demanded an emergency meeting of the Galactic Council. They accused Earth of endangering their students and violating interspecies safety protocols. The delicate balance of galactic politics teetered on the edge of chaos, all because of a simple cup of coffee. Peter, watching the situation spiral out of control, knew he had to act. He approached the university officials with a risky proposition. He would demonstrate coffee's safety by consuming an entire pot in front of the Lurian students and their planet's representatives. It was a bold move, one that could either save Earth's reputation or confirm the Lurians' worst fears. As Peter prepared for his high-stakes demonstration, he encountered unexpected resistance from a group of human students. They saw this as an opportunity to assert Earth's dominance in the galactic community, arguing that humans shouldn't have to prove themselves to alien species. Peter found himself caught between diplomatic necessity and a surge of misguided human pride. Meanwhile, Oren, the Lurian student who had first raised the alarm, found his certainty wavering. He watched Peter's confident determination with growing curiosity. Could it be possible that humans had evolved to consume this deadly substance? The thought challenged everything Oren thought he knew about biology and adaptation. As Peter reached for the pot, a commotion erupted outside the cafeteria. The doors burst open, revealing a tall, distinguished man in a crisp suit. Ambassador Marcus Hawthorne strode in, his presence immediately commanding attention. "Hold everything," he called out, his voice cutting through the tension. "I'm Ambassador Hawthorne, sent by Earth's diplomatic corps to mediate this situation." Peter froze, his hands still outstretched. The Lurian students huddled together, their tentacles intertwining nervously. Ambassador Hawthorne approached the group, his eyes scanning the scene. "I need to speak with the key players here," he said, gesturing to Peter and Oren. "Let's move this discussion to a more appropriate venue." Within minutes, they found themselves in the university's main auditorium. Peter stood awkwardly next to his makeshift coffee station, while Oren hovered nearby, his translator device clutched tightly in his appendages. Ambassador Hawthorne paced the stage, his brow furrowed in concentration. "We need to approach this methodically," he said. "Mr. Simpson, please explain your plan." Peter cleared his throat. I was going to demonstrate that coffee is safe for humans by drinking an entire pot." The ambassador nodded. "A bold move, but perhaps we can refine it." He turned to Oren. "And you, young Lurian, what are your concerns?" Oren's translator crackled to life. The substance they call coffee contains a neurotoxin lethal to our species. We fear for the humans' safety." As they spoke, Peter's friend Jake Chen slipped into the auditorium carrying a large bag. He approached Peter, whispering, "I brought the good stuff. Single origin Ethiopian medium roast." Ambassador Hawthorne overheard their exchange. "Excellent. Mr. Chen, please assist Mr. Simpson in setting up a comprehensive coffee station. We'll make this a proper demonstration." As Jake and Peter busied themselves with grinders, filters, and various brewing devices, the ambassador made a call. Within the hour, Dr. Elena Petrova arrived, her arms laden with monitoring equipment. "Dr. Petrova is a renowned xenobiologist," Ambassador Hawthorne explained to the group. "She'll monitor Mr. Simpson's vital signs during the demonstration and explain the physiological differences that allow humans to safely consume caffeine." Oren watched the proceedings with growing fascination. He approached the ambassador, his translator buzzing. "May I observe more closely?" Ambassador Hawthorne smiled. "Of course. In fact, I think it would be beneficial." He waved over a young woman with short, dark hair. "This is Sarah Miller. She'll be your guide and interpreter for the demonstration." As Sarah began explaining the coffee-making process to Oren, a commotion could be heard outside. Ambassador Hawthorne frowned, moving to investigate. Outside the auditorium, a crowd had gathered. At its center stood Brad Thompson, his face red with anger. "We shouldn't have to prove anything to these aliens," he shouted. "This is our planet, our culture." The ambassador assessed the situation quickly. He spoke quietly to a nearby security officer, then returned to the auditorium. "We'll proceed as planned," he announced. "Campus security will handle the protesters." Inside, Peter stood before the now elaborate coffee station, his hands trembling slightly. Jake gave him a reassuring pat on the back. "You've got this, man. Just like a normal day at the shop." Dr. Petrova attached monitoring devices to Peter's chest and arms. "I'll be tracking your heart rate, blood pressure, and neural activity," she explained. "This will provide concrete data on how your body processes the caffeine." As the final preparations were made, a slender figure slipped into the back of the auditorium. Zixara, the Lurian cultural attaché, settled into a seat, her presence unnoticed by the others. Ambassador Hawthorne took center stage. "Ladies, gentlemen, and honored Lurian guests, we are here to demonstrate the safety of coffee consumption for humans. Mr. Simpson will now begin the demonstration." Oren leaned forward, his eye stalks fixed on the screen. Sarah whispered explanations, helping him interpret the data. Peter continued to drink, moving from a light roast to a dark, then to an espresso. With each cup, Dr. Petrova provided commentary on the physiological effects, emphasizing the differences between human and Lurian biology. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the auditorium. Brad and his protesters had broken through the security cordon and were streaming into the room. "Stop this farce!" Brad shouted. "We won't be subjected to alien scrutiny." Ambassador Hawthorne's face tightened. He glanced at Peter, who was midway through another cup of coffee. "Continue the demonstration," he said firmly, then turned to face the incoming crowd. As chaos threatened to engulf the auditorium, Peter kept drinking. His hands were steady now, his movements precise. He locked eyes with Oren, seeing the Lurian's fear transform into curiosity. Outside, the wail of police sirens cut through the air. Local law enforcement had arrived to reinforce campus security. The global media, alerted to the unfolding drama, began setting up cameras and broadcast equipment. Inside the auditorium, Ambassador Hawthorne's voice rose above the din. "This demonstration is about understanding, not submission. We're building bridges between our species, not bowing to anyone's demands." As Peter drained the last cup, a hush fell over the room. Dr. Petrova studied her instruments, then looked up with a smile. "Mr. Simpson's vital signs are all within normal ranges. The demonstration has been a success." In the back of the auditorium, Zixara made notes on a small device, her expression unreadable. Ambassador Hawthorne turned to address the Lurian students. "We hope this demonstration has alleviated your concerns. Now, perhaps we can discuss how our different physiologies have led to this misunderstanding." As the diplomat began to explain, Peter slumped into a chair, exhausted but relieved. Jake handed him a glass of water. "You did it, man. You might have just saved Earth's reputation in the galaxy." Peter nodded, too tired to speak. He watched as Oren cautiously approached the coffee station, Sarah at his side. The Lurian extended a tentacle, gingerly touching a coffee bean. Outside, the standoff between protesters and police continued, but inside the auditorium, a small moment of interspecies understanding was unfolding over a simple cup of coffee. Coffee. The fragrant aroma of freshly brewed espresso filled the auditorium as Peter lifted the small cup to his lips. He took a sip, savoring the rich, bitter taste before addressing the crowd. "This is a simple espresso shot," he explained, his voice calm despite the palpable tension in the room. "It's made by forcing hot water through finely ground coffee beans under high pressure." The Lurian students, huddled together near the front of the auditorium, watched with a mixture of horror and fascination. Oren's eye stalks quivered, fixated on the dark liquid as Peter drank. The steady beeping of Dr. Elena Petrova's monitoring equipment provided a rhythmic backdrop to the demonstration. "As you can see on the screen," Dr. Petrova interjected, gesturing to the large display showing Peter's vital signs, "Mr. Simpson's heart rate and blood pressure are within normal ranges for caffeine consumption in humans." Ambassador Hawthorne nodded approvingly, but his satisfaction was short-lived. A commotion outside the auditorium drew everyone's attention. The muffled shouts grew louder, and suddenly the doors burst open. Brad Thompson and his protesters poured into the room, their faces contorted with anger. "This is our planet," Brad yelled, his voice echoing off the walls. "We won't be subjected to alien scrutiny." Undeterred, Peter moved on to showcase different brewing methods. He prepared a pour-over, carefully explaining each step of the process to the captivated audience. "Coffee isn't just a drink for us," Peter said, his movements becoming more animated as the caffeine took effect. "It's a cultural cornerstone. It fuels our productivity, sparks conversations, and brings people together." As Peter consumed more coffee, Dr. Petrova noted the changes in his physiology. "You'll notice Mr. Simpson's pupils have dilated and his heart rate has increased slightly. These are normal human responses to caffeine." Oren, who had been watching intently, turned to Sarah Miller. "The aroma, it's complex," he said through his translator. "Are there different varieties of this coffee?" Sarah smiled, encouraged by his curiosity. "Yes, there are many different types of coffee beans, each with its own unique flavor profile." Ambassador Hawthorne observed this exchange with interest, recognizing the potential for cultural understanding. However, his optimism was tempered by the sight of Zixara, the Lurian cultural attaché, tapping furiously on a small device in the back of the auditorium. As the demonstration progressed, Peter's movements became more energetic, his explanations more rapid-fire. He bounced from one brewing method to another, extolling the virtues of light roasts versus dark roasts. "This increased alertness and energy is one of the reasons humans value coffee," Dr. Petrova explained to the Lurian students. "Our bodies process caffeine differently from yours. What's toxic to Lurians is a beneficial stimulant for humans." She launched into a detailed comparison of human and Lurian physiology, using diagrams on the large screen to illustrate her points. The scientific explanation seemed to resonate with the Lurian students, who listened with rapt attention. "Hey, you guys have got it all wrong," he said, lowering his voice. "This isn't about proving anything to the aliens. We're showing them just how superior humans are. You should see how impressed they are in there." Brad's expression shifted from anger to intrigue. "Really? They're impressed?" This clever manipulation caused Brad to hesitate, giving campus security the opening they needed to regroup and contain the protest. Jake used the distraction to dash to the nearest campus cafe for more coffee supplies. Back in the auditorium, the effects of Peter's continued coffee consumption were becoming more apparent. Sweat beaded on his forehead, and his hands shook slightly as he prepared another cup. "As you can see," Dr. Petrova said, her tone reassuring, "Mr. Simpson is experiencing some signs of overcaffeination. These include increased perspiration and mild tremors. It's important to note that while uncomfortable, these symptoms are not life-threatening." Oren, who had been gradually inching closer to the demonstration table, suddenly stepped forward. Through Sarah's translation, he addressed Peter directly. Peter managed a smile. "I'm okay," he said. "Just a little jittery. It's what happens when you drink too much coffee too fast." This unexpected moment of empathy created a ripple of murmurs among both humans and Lurians. Ambassador Hawthorne, seizing the opportunity, stepped forward. "Perhaps this would be a good time for a brief intermission," he suggested. "It will give Mr. Simpson a chance to recover and allow us all to discuss what we've observed so far." As the crowd broke into small groups, humans and Lurians began to mingle hesitantly. The air buzzed with conversation, translations, and questions. Oren found himself at the center of a group of curious human students, eagerly explaining Lurian biology and culture. Zixara, who had been observing from afar, made her way to Ambassador Hawthorne. "Ambassador," she said, her translator relaying a mix of concern and cautious optimism. "I am Zixara, cultural attaché from Luria. This demonstration has taken an unexpected turn." Before Zixara could respond, Jake burst back into the auditorium, arms laden with fresh coffee supplies. He quickly began setting up for the second half of the demonstration. As the intermission drew to a close, Peter took a deep breath, preparing to resume his coffee-tasting marathon. The atmosphere in the auditorium had shifted palpably. What had begun as a potential diplomatic disaster had evolved into something far more complex and promising. Ambassador Hawthorne cleared his throat, drawing everyone's attention. "Ladies, gentlemen, and honored Lurian guests, we're about to continue our demonstration, but I think we can all agree that we've already learned much more than we anticipated about each other." Peter stepped up to the coffee station, his hands steadier now, ready to brew the next cup. The Lurian students leaned forward, their initial fear replaced by genuine curiosity. Even Brad and his protesters, still held at bay by security, watched through the auditorium doors with begrudging interest. As the rich aroma of freshly ground coffee beans filled the air once more, it carried with it the promise of newfound understanding between two very different species. The second act of this unconventional diplomatic summit was about to begin, with the fate of Earth-Luria relations hanging in the balance, all centered around a simple cup of coffee. Coffee. The rich aroma of freshly ground beans filled the air as Peter began brewing the next cup, his hands steadier now after the brief intermission. The Lurian students leaned forward, their initial fear replaced by genuine curiosity. "For our next demonstration, we'll explore some more advanced coffee preparations," Peter announced, his voice carrying a hint of excitement despite his fatigue. "Let's start with cold brew." He poured a dark, syrupy liquid from a large glass container into a cup filled with ice. Cold brew is made by steeping coffee grounds in cold water for an extended period, usually 12 to 24 hours. This results in a smoother, less acidic flavor profile. As Peter sipped the cold brew, Dr. Petrova's monitoring equipment beeped softly. She frowned, noticing an unexpected spike in Peter's heart rate. The doctor made a note on her tablet, deciding to keep a closer eye on his vital signs. Next, Peter moved to a sleek, metallic contraption. "This is a nitro coffee setup," he explained, pulling a lever to dispense a cascading, creamy-looking liquid into a tall glass. "We infuse cold brew coffee with nitrogen gas, creating a rich, velvety texture similar to that of a dark beer." As Peter continued his explanations, Oren inched closer to the demonstration table, his eye stalks quivering with interest. "Excuse me," he said through his translator, addressing Sarah Miller. "Would it be possible to smell these different preparations?" Sarah glanced at Ambassador Hawthorne, who nodded his approval. "Of course, Oren," she said with a warm smile. "Let me help you experience the aromas safely." Sarah guided Oren to each coffee preparation, holding cups at a safe distance for him to sample the scents without risking contact with the liquid. The Lurian's eye stalks bobbed with excitement as he experienced each unique aroma. Zixara, the Lurian cultural attaché, watched this interaction intently from the back of the auditorium. Her translator emitted a series of soft clicks as she made notes on her device, recognizing the potential diplomatic implications of this growing interspecies curiosity. As the demonstration progressed, Peter's condition began to deteriorate visibly. Sweat beaded on his forehead, and his hands shook as he prepared the next cup. Dr. Petrova's monitoring equipment showed alarming spikes in his heart rate and blood pressure. "Ambassador," Dr. Petrova whispered urgently to Hawthorne, "Mr. Simpson's vital signs are becoming concerning. His body temperature is rising above normal levels, and his heart rate is far beyond what we'd expect from caffeine consumption alone." Ambassador Hawthorne's brow furrowed as he assessed the situation. He opened his mouth to intervene, but before he could speak, a commotion erupted outside the auditorium. Jake Chen burst through the doors, his face flushed with exertion. "Ambassador," he panted, "we have a problem. Brad and his protesters, they've regrouped. They overheard some of the discussions about cultural exchange and got riled up again. Campus security is struggling to hold them back." Inside the auditorium, Peter swayed on his feet, his face pale and clammy. I don't feel so good," he mumbled, his words slurring slightly. The cup in his hand clattered to the floor as his eyes rolled back in his head. "Peter!" Sarah cried out as he collapsed on stage. The auditorium erupted into chaos. Human students gasped and shouted, while the Lurians recoiled in shock, their translators emitting a cacophony of alarmed clicks and whistles. Dr. Petrova rushed to Peter's side, her medical training kicking in. "Call for emergency medical assistance immediately," she shouted, checking Peter's pulse and breathing. As Jake scrambled to make the call, Orrin surprised everyone by slithering forward. "I may be able to assist," he said, his translator conveying a tone of urgent concern. "Our species has advanced knowledge of toxicology. We might be able to combine Earth and Lurian medical techniques to treat this caffeine toxicity." Dr. Petrova looked up, her initial skepticism giving way to professional curiosity. "What do you suggest?" Orrin began explaining a complex treatment involving a combination of earth minerals and a Lurian enzyme known for its ability to break down certain toxins. As they discussed the potential treatment, emergency medical technicians arrived, pushing through the crowd with a stretcher. The EMTs worked quickly, attaching monitoring equipment and starting an IV. Dr. Petrova relayed Orrin's suggestion, and after a brief consultation, they agreed to try the unconventional treatment. As Peter was stabilized and prepared for transport to the hospital, Ambassador Hawthorne turned to Zixara. "Attaché," he said, his voice grave but tinged with hope, "I believe this unfortunate incident may have opened a door for us. Would you be willing to discuss the possibility of collaborative research on xenobiology and cross-species medical treatments?" Zixara's eye stalks swiveled towards the ambassador. "In light of recent events," her translator conveyed, "I believe such discussions would be most prudent. The potential benefits to both our species are significant." As Peter was wheeled out of the auditorium, the atmosphere had transformed completely. What had begun as a simple demonstration had evolved into a complex scenario involving medical emergencies, diplomatic negotiations, and the potential for groundbreaking scientific collaboration. Outside, the shouts of protesters suddenly quieted. Brad Thompson pushed his way into the auditorium, his face pale as he watched the medical team rush past with Peter on the stretcher. "What happened?" Brad asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Jake, who had been helping to clear a path for the medical team, turned to face Brad. "Peter collapsed from caffeine toxicity," he explained. "He was trying to demonstrate that coffee isn't harmful to humans, but he pushed it too far." Brad's expression shifted from shock to shame. We didn't mean for anyone to get hurt," he stammered. "We just wanted to protect our planet." As the reality of the situation sank in, Brad and several of his fellow protesters approached Ambassador Hawthorne. "Sir," Brad said, his voice thick with emotion, "we'd like to help. Is there anything we can do to assist campus security or the Lurians?" Ambassador Hawthorne regarded Brad thoughtfully, recognizing the opportunity for reconciliation. "As a matter of fact," he said, "there is. We could use some help maintaining order and facilitating communication between humans and Lurians as we sort through this situation." As Brad and his group integrated into the efforts to manage the aftermath of Peter's collapse, news of the incident began to spread across campus and beyond. Reports of the unexpected turn of events reached the Galactic Council, prompting urgent discussions about revising protocols for cultural exchange programs and interspecies education. In the auditorium, Humans and Lurians alike huddled in small groups, their previous divisions forgotten in the face of shared concern for Peter's well-being. Conversations buzzed with speculation about the potential medical breakthroughs that could arise from this crisis and the implications for future Earth-Luria relations. As the initial shock began to subside, Ambassador Hawthorne found himself at the center of a flurry of activity. He fielded calls from Earth's government officials, coordinated with Lurian representatives, and prepared statements for the global media that had gathered outside the building. The simple cup of coffee that had started it all sat forgotten on the demonstration table, its contents now cold. But its impact would be felt far beyond the walls of the auditorium, ushering in a new era of interspecies cooperation and understanding. Understanding and humanity's standing in the galactic community. The auditorium, once a battleground of conflicting ideologies, now buzzed with a newfound sense of unity and purpose. As the emergency medical team rushed Peter to the University Medical Center, Dr. Elena Petrova found herself running alongside the stretcher, her mind racing with possibilities. "We need to set up a comprehensive monitoring system," she barked at the EMTs. "I want real-time data on his vital signs, metabolic processes, and neural activity." Oren slithered beside her, his eye stalks swiveling between Dr. Petrova and Peter's unconscious form. "I can provide assistance with Lurian medical technology," he offered through his translator. "Our bioscanners might detect nuances your equipment might miss." Dr. Petrova nodded, her initial skepticism giving way to professional curiosity. "Agreed. Let's set up a joint human-Lurian medical team. This could be an unprecedented opportunity for cross-species medical research." Hours ticked by as Peter's condition stabilized. Dr. Petrova and Oren huddled over screens, displaying a wealth of medical data, their excited chatter filling the observation room. "Look at this," Dr. Petrova exclaimed, pointing to a graph. "The way his body is processing the caffeine, it's unlike anything we've seen before." As dawn broke, Ambassador Marcus Hawthorne entered the medical center, his face a mask of concern and cautious optimism. He found Dr. Petrova and Oren engrossed in their work, surrounded by holographic displays of Peter's physiology. "How is he?" Hawthorne asked, his voice low. Dr. Petrova looked up, her eyes bright with excitement despite her evident fatigue. "Stable and improving, Ambassador. But more importantly, we're on the brink of something revolutionary here." She gestured to the displays, launching into an explanation of their findings. Hawthorne listened intently, his diplomatic mind already racing ahead to the possibilities. "Doctor," he interrupted gently, "how quickly can you prepare a preliminary report on your findings?" Dr. Petrova blinked, surprised. "We could have something ready in a few days, but—" "Make it 48 hours, Hawthorne said, his tone brooking no argument. "I need to present this to the Galactic Council immediately." As Hawthorne strode out of the medical center, his comm device buzzed. It was Zixara, the Lurian cultural attaché. "Ambassador," her translator conveyed a mix of excitement and urgency. "I've been monitoring the situation. This incident, it presents a unique opportunity for both our species." Hawthorne smiled. "I couldn't agree more, attaché. Meet me in my office in an hour. I have a proposal I'd like to discuss with you." Over the next few days, as Peter recovered under the watchful eyes of the joint medical team, a whirlwind of activity swept through Galactic University and beyond. His assistant nodded, adding, "The xenogastronomy and comparative xenobiology departments are particularly popular, sir." Meanwhile, in a crowded lecture hall, Brad Thompson stood before a diverse group of human and alien students. "Welcome to the first meeting of Cosmic Connections," he began, his voice filled with purpose. "Our goal is to bridge the gap between species, to foster understanding and friendship across the stars." As Brad outlined his plans for interspecies mixers and cultural exchange events, Oren slipped into the back of the hall, his eye stalks swiveling to take in the scene. He felt a swell of pride at the transformation he was witnessing. Across campus, in a state-of-the-art laboratory, Dr. Petrova and a team of human and Lurian scientists huddled around a holographic display of Peter's brain. The caffeine molecule interacts with human neural receptors in a way that's fascinatingly different from its effect on Lurian physiology, Dr. Petrova explained, manipulating the 3D image. A Lurian scientist named Zixtara clicked excitedly. This could lead to breakthroughs in treating a range of neurological disorders in both our species. As the scientists delved deeper into their research, Ambassador Hawthorne stood before the Galactic Council, his posture confident as he addressed the assembled representatives. Distinguished members of the Council, he began, I stand before you today to propose a program that will revolutionize interspecies relations. We call it brew diplomacy. As Hawthorne outlined the details of the cultural exchange program, involving human baristas teaching coffee cultivation on Luria and Lurian scientists studying caffeine's effects on Earth, the council chamber buzzed with interest. Back on Earth, Peter Simpson sat up in his hospital bed, still a bit groggy but improving rapidly. Jake Chen perched on the edge of the bed, regaling his friend with the latest news. You're not going to believe this, Pete, Jake said, his eyes wide with excitement. They're sending baristas to Luria, and guess who's been selected for the first team? Peter's eyebrows shot up. No way, you're going to Luria? As the two friends discussed the implications of this new venture, Zixtara entered the room, her translator emitting a polite series of clicks. Mr. Simpson, she began, I hope you're feeling better. I wanted to personally thank you for your unintentional but significant contribution to Earth-Luria relations. Zixtara's eye stalks quivered in what Peter had come to recognize as amusement. Nevertheless, your actions have set in motion a series of events that will reshape our galactic community. In fact, I'm here to extend an invitation. The Galactic Council would like you to speak at their annual conference on interspecies relations. As Peter stammered his shocked acceptance, the scene outside his window captured the new reality of life at Galactic University. Human and alien students mingled freely on the quad, their laughter and excited chatter filling the air. A group of Lurians clustered around a newly installed coffee cart, cautiously sampling their first taste of the controversial beverage under the watchful eye of a trained barista. In the distance, construction crews broke ground on the new xenogastronomy building, its sleek design a testament to the university's commitment to interspecies education. And high above, ships from distant worlds streaked across the sky, bringing with them a new wave of students, diplomats, and tourists eager to experience the planet that had suddenly become the most exciting destination in the galaxy. As the sun set on another transformative day, the aroma of fresh coffee wafted through the air, a symbol of the unexpected catalyst that had brought two worlds together and opened up a universe of possibilities. Possibilities and opened up a universe of opportunity for Earth and its inhabitants. In the weeks that followed, Galactic University underwent a dramatic transformation. The once quiet campus buzzed with an unprecedented influx of alien students, each drawn by the allure of Earth's newfound celebrity in the galactic community. At the heart of this interstellar frenzy was the Brew Diplomacy program, which had catapulted Earth from a relatively obscure planet to the focal point of cosmic attention. Peter Simpson, fully recovered from his caffeine overdose, found himself thrust into a role he never could have anticipated. As he walked across the quad, alien students of various species turned to stare and whisper excitedly. There he is, a Varaxian student chittered to his companion, the human who changed everything with a cup of coffee. Upon entering, Peter was greeted by the sight of Dr. Patel and Ambassador Marcus Hawthorne engaged in animated discussion. Ah, Mr. Simpson, Dr. Patel said, gesturing for Peter to take a seat. Thank you for coming. We have a proposition for you. Ambassador Hawthorne leaned forward, his eyes twinkling with excitement. Peter, your actions have inadvertently made you the face of human-alien relations. We'd like to make that official. Peter blinked, unsure if he had heard correctly. I'm sorry. What? Dr. Patel smiled. We're appointing you as the official student liaison for our alien exchange students. You'll help them acclimate to Earth culture, organize events, and serve as a bridge between humans and our extraterrestrial guests. As Peter absorbed this information, his legs shaking with the implications, a knock at the door interrupted them. Dr. Patel called for the visitor to enter, and Peter turned to see a Lurian student slither into the office. Ah, perfect timing, Ambassador Hawthorne said. Peter, I'd like you to meet Zara. She's one of our new exchange students from Luria, with a particular interest in xenobiology and human physiology. Zara's eye stalks swiveled to focus on Peter, and he felt a strange flutter in his stomach as her translator emitted a series of clicks and whistles. Peter felt his face flush. "Well, I wouldn't recommend trying it yourself," he joked weakly. As Peter and Zara chatted, their conversation flowing with surprising ease, Dr. Patel and Ambassador Hawthorne exchanged knowing glances. This was exactly the kind of interaction they had hoped for when conceiving the liaison position. Over the next few weeks, Peter threw himself into his new role with gusto. He organized orientation sessions for new alien students, led campus tours, and coordinated cultural exchange events. Through it all, he found himself spending more and more time with Zara. "Peter, I've been curious," she began, her eye stalks quivering slightly. "This coffee that's caused such a stir, what does it taste like?" Peter chuckled, reaching for the thermos he always carried with him now. "It's hard to describe," he said, pouring a small amount into the cap. "It's bitter, but with complex flavors. Some people find it an acquired taste." He took a sip, savoring the rich flavor. Zara watched intently, her curiosity evident in the way her eye stalks focused on the thermos. "I wish I could try it," she said wistfully. "It's fascinating how something so harmless to you could be toxic to me." Peter nodded, suddenly struck by the vast differences between them. Despite their growing closeness, there were some experiences they could never truly share. As they sat in companionable silence, Peter's comm device buzzed with an incoming message. It was from Dr. Elena Petrova, requesting his presence at the medical research facility immediately. Intrigued, Peter and Zara made their way to the facility, where they found Dr. Petrova and Oren in a state of almost unchecked excitement. "Peter, Zara, thank you for coming," Dr. Petrova said, ushering them into the lab. "We've made a breakthrough in our research on interspecies metabolic processes." Oren's eye stalks quivered with enthusiasm as he brought up a holographic display. "By studying how your body processed the caffeine, Peter, we've uncovered fascinating insights into how different species metabolize various compounds." As they explained their findings, the lab door slid open, revealing a tall, imposing figure with piercing eyes and a shock of white hair. "Ah, Dr. Blackwood," Dr. Petrova said, her tone carrying a hint of wariness. "I didn't realize you were on campus." Dr. Xander Blackwood strode into the lab, his gaze sweeping over the assembled group before settling on the holographic display. "Fascinating work, Dr. Petrova, Oren," he said, his voice smooth and authoritative. "But I believe you're only scratching the surface of what's possible." He turned to face the group, his eyes gleaming with an intensity that made Peter uneasy. "Imagine," Dr. Blackwood began, "if we could use this research to develop a method for temporarily altering alien physiology. We could create a way for species like the Lurians to safely consume substances that would normally be toxic to them." The lab fell silent as the implications of his words sank in. Zara's eye stalks swiveled rapidly between Dr. Blackwood and Peter, her excitement palpable. "You mean I could drink coffee?" she asked, her translator barely keeping up with her rapid clicks. Dr. Blackwood smiled, a predatory gleam in his eyes. "Coffee would be just the beginning, my dear. Think of the possibilities for cultural exchange, for breaking down the barriers between species." As the scientists launched into a heated discussion about the potential and ethical implications of such research, Peter felt a chill run down his spine. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the brink of something that would change the course of human-alien relations forever. Little did they know, news of Dr. Blackwood's proposal was already spreading beyond the walls of the lab. Across the city, in a dimly lit room, a group of humans huddled around a comm device, their faces twisted with anger and fear. "Did you hear that, Colonel?" one of them growled. "They want to change alien DNA now. Where does it end?" Colonel Marcus Steele, leader of the extremist Earth First group, leaned back in his chair, his eyes cold and calculating. As the group began to plan their attack, the sun set on another day at Galactic University, casting long shadows across the campus. The air was thick with the scent of alien flora and the ever-present aroma of coffee, a constant reminder of the changes sweeping through Earth and the galaxy beyond. In his dorm room, Peter sat at his desk, staring at a hollow image of himself and Zara taken at a recent cultural exchange event. His feelings for the Lurian student had grown stronger with each passing day, but so had his awareness of the vast differences between them. As he reached for his ever-present cup of coffee, Peter couldn't help but wonder what the future held for him, for Zara, and for the delicate balance of human-alien relations. Little did he know, forces were already in motion that would soon test the limits of interspecies understanding and challenge humanity's place in the cosmos. Peter's comm device buzzed urgently, interrupting his contemplation of the hollow image. He glanced at the screen and froze, his eyes widening as he read the emergency alert. Heart pounding, he leapt to his feet and sprinted out of his dorm room. The campus was already in chaos. Sirens wailed as security personnel rushed to implement emergency protocols. Peter's mind raced as he coordinated with campus security, directing them to secure alien students in designated safe zones across the university. "Peter!" a familiar voice called out. He turned to see Jake Chen running towards him, looking windswept and disheveled. "Jake? I thought you were on Luria," Peter said, surprised. Jake nodded, catching his breath. "Just got back. What's going on?" Peter quickly filled him in on the situation as they moved through the panicking crowds. "We need to find Zara," Peter said, his voice tight with worry. As they navigated the chaos, the sound of breaking glass and shouting erupted from a nearby building. Peter and Jake exchanged a grim look before ducking into a side alley. "This way," Peter whispered, leading Jake to a concealed entrance. "These maintenance tunnels run under the whole campus. We can use them to move around safely." They descended into the dimly lit tunnels, the sounds of conflict muffled above them. As they moved, they encountered small groups of frightened alien students. Peter and Jake quickly took charge, guiding them towards the nearest safe zone. In the research wing, Dr. Elena Petrova and Oren worked frantically to secure their data. Holographic displays flickered around them as they transferred critical information to an off-site server. "Oren, grab the prototype serum," Dr. Petrova ordered, her fingers flying over a control panel. "We can't risk losing it." The Lurian scientist carefully placed vials of the experimental compound into a secure container. "Do you think they'll breach the lab?" Oren asked, his eye stalks quivering with anxiety. Before Dr. Petrova could respond, the lab door slid open. Dr. Xander Blackwood strode in, his face grim. "They're coming," he said without preamble. "We need to move now." As they gathered the last of their research, a violent explosion rocked the building. Alarms blared as emergency containment protocols activated. "Go!" Dr. Blackwood shouted, ushering Petrova and Oren towards a hidden exit. "I'll hold them off." In the tunnels below, Peter, Jake, and their group of students felt the tremors of the explosion above. Dust rained down from the ceiling as they pressed on, fear etched on every face. "We're almost there," Peter assured them, checking his comm device for the safest route. Suddenly, Jake held up a hand, signaling for silence. The group froze, listening intently. The faint sound of footsteps echoed from a nearby junction. Jake motioned for the others to stay back as he crept forward to investigate. Peter watched, his heart in his throat, as Jake peered around the corner. A moment later, Jake's eyes widened in alarm. He turned and mouthed one word: "Run." Peter hesitated for a split second before leading the terrified students down another tunnel. The sounds of Jake's fight faded behind them as they ran. Above ground, Ambassador Marcus Hawthorne paced in his office, his face grave as he spoke into a secure comlink. "Yes, Counselor. The situation is critical. We need immediate assistance." There was a pause as he listened to the response. "I understand the implications, but we have no choice. Lives are at stake." Another pause. "Thank you, Counselor. We await your support." As Hawthorne ended the call, he looked out his window at the chaos unfolding across the campus. For the first time in Earth's history, alien military forces would set foot on their soil. The galaxy would never be the same. In the research wing, Dr. Blackwood found himself face-to-face with Colonel Marcus Steele. The two men stood at opposite ends of the destroyed lab, debris scattered between them. "You don't understand what you're destroying, Steele," Blackwood said, his voice steady despite the danger. "This research could revolutionize interspecies relations." Steele's eyes narrowed. You're the one who doesn't understand, Doctor. Your work threatens the very fabric of human society. Progress always faces resistance, Blackwood countered, but it can't be stopped. With a snarl of rage, Steele lunged forward. The two men grappled amidst the wreckage of the lab, years of scientific progress crumbling around them. Peter and his group emerged from the tunnels near the evacuation point, only to find it surrounded by Earth-First forces. Desperation clawed at Peter's throat as he searched for a way out. An idea struck him. He turned to the human students in the group. "I need your help," he said urgently. "We're going to stage an alien invasion." Using whatever they could find, lab coats, welding masks, and pieces of equipment, they cobbled together makeshift alien disguises. Peter instructed them on how to move and sound as alien as possible. With a deep breath, Peter gave the signal. The human students burst from their hiding place, wailing and gesticulating wildly in their bizarre costumes. The Earth-First operatives, caught off guard by the sudden appearance of aliens, fell into disarray. In the confusion, Peter led the real alien students to safety, slipping past the distracted attackers. As dawn broke over the battered campus, the whine of alien engines filled the air. Sleek ships descended from the sky, bearing the insignia of the Galactic Council. Peacekeepers from a dozen different species poured out, their advanced weapons and tactics quickly turning the tide of battle. Colonel Steele, battered and cornered, found himself surrounded by a mixed force of human security and alien peacekeepers. The sight of humans and aliens working in perfect concert seemed to deflate him. He lowered his weapon, the fight gone out of him. In the aftermath, Peter stumbled through the debris-strewn quad, exhaustion weighing heavily on him. A familiar voice called his name, and he turned to see Zara rushing towards him. As they embraced, Peter felt the tension of the past hours begin to melt away. They had survived, and in doing so, had perhaps changed the course of Earth's future. Around them, humans and aliens worked side by side to treat the injured and begin the process of rebuilding. The failed attack, meant to drive them apart, had instead brought them closer together than ever before. Peter looked up at the sky, where the ships of the Galactic Council still hovered. Earth's isolationism had ended in a single night. What would tomorrow bring? Earth's isolationism had ended in a single night. What would tomorrow bring? The answer came swiftly as the campus of Galactic University transformed into a bustling hub of interspecies cooperation. Humans and aliens alike worked tirelessly to clear debris, repair damaged structures, and restore the symbol of unity that the university had become. Peter found himself at the heart of this collaborative effort, coordinating teams of mixed species as they tackled the monumental task of rebuilding. He watched in awe as a burly Kraxon used its 4 powerful arms to lift a fallen support beam, while a group of nimble Vespidians carefully rewired damaged electrical systems. "It's incredible, isn't it?" Zara clicked, her eyes stalks swiveling to take in the scene. "Just days ago, some wanted to tear us apart. Now look at us." Peter nodded, a smile tugging at his lips. "It's like the attack backfired completely. Instead of driving us apart, it's brought us closer than ever." As the days passed, the campus slowly returned to its former glory. New structures rose from the ashes, incorporating design elements from various alien cultures. The rebuilt science wing, in particular, stood as a testament to this new era of cooperation, its architecture a harmonious blend of human ingenuity and alien aesthetics. Within its walls, Dr. Xander Blackwood and his team worked feverishly to advance their research on interspecies compatibility. The prototype data, safely preserved thanks to Dr. Petrova and Oren's quick thinking, provided a solid foundation for their efforts. Peter often found himself visiting the lab, drawn by both scientific curiosity and a desire to support his friends. On one such visit, he arrived to find the team in a state of barely held-back excitement. "Peter!" Dr. Blackwood called out, his eyes alight with triumph. "You're just in time. We've done it." The scientist held up a vial containing a shimmering, opalescent liquid. "Behold the fruit of our labors, a safe temporary serum that will allow Lurians to metabolize caffeine without harm." Zara, who had accompanied Peter, let out a series of rapid clicks that her translator struggled to keep up with. "You mean, I can finally try coffee?" Dr. Petrova nodded, smiling warmly. "Indeed, Zara. We'll need to conduct further tests, of course, but the preliminary results are extremely promising." News of the breakthrough spread rapidly, capturing the attention of the Galactic Council. Earth's handling of the crisis, coupled with this scientific achievement, led to an unprecedented decision. Earth's application for full council membership would be fast-tracked. The announcement triggered a global referendum, plunging Earth into a whirlwind of debate and discussion. Citizens from all walks of life grappled with the question of humanity's place among the stars. Peter found himself thrust into the spotlight as Earth's newly appointed youth ambassador to the Galactic Council. His days became a blur of speeches, interviews, and meetings as he embarked on a worldwide tour to share his experiences and promote interspecies understanding. At a packed auditorium in New Delhi, Peter addressed a diverse crowd of humans and aliens. "The attack on Galactic University was meant to divide us," he said, his voice carrying to the farthest corners of the room. "Instead, it showed us the strength we have when we stand together. The choice before us now is simple. Do we retreat into isolation, or do we embrace our place in the galactic community?" As Peter spoke, he couldn't help but notice the many interspecies couples in the audience. His relationship with Zara, once a subject of curiosity and sometimes derision, had become a symbol of hope and possibility. Meanwhile, back at Galactic University, Jake Chen channeled his combat experience into a new initiative. The interspecies self-defense program he established quickly gained popularity among both human and alien students. In a spacious dojo on campus, Jake led a class through a series of fluid movements. "Remember," he called out, demonstrating a defensive stance, "the key is to understand and adapt to your partner's physiology. A technique that works against a human might be useless against a Kraxan." The students paired off, humans and aliens working together to perfect their forms. The air filled with a mix of grunts, clicks, and the occasional burst of laughter as they navigated the challenges and discoveries of interspecies combat training. As Earth continued its rapid integration into the galactic community, the brew diplomacy program expanded beyond coffee. Restaurants and cultural centers sprang up across the planet, offering alien visitors the chance to experience the full range of Earth's culinary and artistic diversity. In a bustling market in Marrakesh, a group of Vespidians sampled spicy tagines, their mandibles clicking in appreciation of the complex flavors. Nearby, a Lurian artist collaborated with a human calligrapher, creating a stunning fusion of their two styles. The influx of alien tourists spurred the development of new infrastructure. Hotels with variable gravity settings and atmosphere-controlled rooms became commonplace in major cities. Spaceports expanded to accommodate ships of all sizes and configurations. As these changes swept across Earth, the trial of Colonel Marcus Steele began. The proceedings, held in a newly established interstellar court, were broadcast across the galaxy. Billions of beings watched as human law grappled with the concept of crimes against alien species, setting precedents that would shape galactic jurisprudence for generations to come. In the midst of these momentous events, Dr. Blackwood and his team prepared for the first public trial of the compatibility serum. A group of volunteer Lurians, with Zara at the forefront, gathered at Galactic University for a historic coffee tasting. The event was set up in the university's grand atrium, with holographic cameras capturing every angle for the billions of viewers across the galaxy. Peter stood at a podium, his heart racing with a mix of excitement and nerves. "Today," he began, his voice steady despite his inner turmoil, "we take another step towards true interspecies understanding. What might seem like a small act, sharing a simple cup of coffee, represents so much more. It's a bridge between cultures, a symbol of our shared future." Zara and the other Lurian volunteers stepped forward, each accepting a steaming mug from a smiling barista. The tension in the room was palpable as Zara raised the cup to her mandibles. Just as she was about to take her first sip, a commotion erupted at the back of the atrium. A flustered aide rushed to Peter's side, whispering urgently in his ear. Peter's eyes widened in shock. He turned back to the audience, his knees going weak from the news he'd just received. "Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all species," he said, his voice trembling slightly, "I've just been informed that Earth has received a message from a previously unknown alien civilization. They've expressed interest in establishing diplomatic relations and hint at advanced technology that could revolutionize interstellar travel and communication." As the audience buzzed with excitement and speculation, Peter locked eyes with Zara. In that moment, they both realized that they stood at the threshold of a new era. The simple act of sharing a cup of coffee had indeed become a catalyst for unprecedented change, propelling humanity into the heart of galactic affairs. The stage was set for Earth's next great adventure. With the pending Galactic Council membership, the promising Harmony Project, and now the prospect of contacting an advanced alien civilization, humanity faced a future filled with boundless possibilities and challenges. And it all hinged on what would happen next, as Zara raised the cup of coffee once more to her mandibles, ready to take that first historic sip. The atrium fell silent as Zara's mandibles closed around the rim of the coffee mug. Peter held his breath, acutely aware of the billions of eyes watching this moment across the galaxy. The compatibility serum coursing through Zara's system had already triggered visible changes. Her exoskeleton had taken on a subtle, iridescent sheen, and her eye stalks quivered with heightened sensitivity. Zara's first sip was tentative, barely more than a taste. Her eye stalks froze, then slowly rotated towards Peter. For a heart-stopping moment, he feared the worst. Then a series of rapid clicks emanated from her speech organs, which her translator rendered into a breathless, "It's incredible!" Peter stepped forward, ready to address the audience and mark this historic moment. But before he could speak, a piercing alarm cut through the celebratory atmosphere. Red warning lights flashed across the atrium as a computerized voice announced, "Security breach detected. Unknown energy signature detected in Earth's upper atmosphere." The crowd's jubilation turned to confusion and fear. Peter locked eyes with Jake Chen, who was already mobilizing his mixed team of human and alien security personnel. Ambassador Marcus Hawthorne rushed to Peter's side, his face etched with concern. As if on cue, the air above the university shimmered and distorted. A massive holographic image materialized, dwarfing the buildings below. The being projected was unlike anything Peter had ever seen. A swirling, ever-changing form of light and energy, vaguely humanoid, but constantly shifting. Panic rippled through the crowd. The Galactic Council representatives present began urgent communications with their superiors. Peter felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He knew that his next actions could determine the course of Earth's galactic future. Taking a deep breath, Peter stepped forward, his voice amplified by the university's systems. "On behalf of Earth and the assembled galactic community, I welcome you, Axiom. Your interest in our ceremony honors us. While we hadn't anticipated your direct participation, perhaps this is an opportunity for an even greater exchange of cultures." Peter's mind raced as he spoke, formulating a plan. "You've arrived at a momentous occasion. The first time our Lurian friends have been able to share in one of humanity's most beloved beverages. In the spirit of galactic cooperation, we invite you to share something of your own culture with us in return." The holographic being seemed to pulse with interest. "An intriguing proposal, young human. We accept. Prepare yourselves." Before anyone could react, a beam of scintillating energy shot down from the hologram. It coalesced into a floating sphere of swirling colors, hovering at the center of the atrium. The Axiom's voice resonated once more. "This is the essence of our sustenance. Pure energy distilled from the heart of a neutron star. We offer it freely as a gesture of goodwill." Ambassador Hawthorne stepped forward, his diplomatic training kicking in. "We are deeply honored by your gift, Axiom. However, I'm not certain if our physiology—" Peter interjected, seizing the moment. "Ambassador, if I may, Dr. Blackwood, is there any way we could analyze this energy? Perhaps find a way to safely experience it, as the Axiom experience our coffee?" Dr. Blackwood's eyes lit up at the challenge. "It's possible. We'd need to modulate the energy frequency, perhaps use a neural interface to simulate the sensory experience without physical consumption. Give me an hour with my team, and we might have something." The next 60 minutes were a whirlwind of activity. As Dr. Blackwood and his team worked feverishly, Peter engaged the Axiom in conversation, learning more about their civilization and sharing details about Earth and its place in the galactic community. The holographic being seemed genuinely fascinated by the diversity of life forms present at the ceremony. Meanwhile, Zara and the other Lurians continued their coffee experience, their reactions providing a welcome distraction for the nervous crowd. Jake Chen and his security team remained on high alert, their weapons trained on the floating energy sphere despite Peter's assurances of peace. Just as tensions were reaching a breaking point, Dr. Blackwood emerged from his lab, carrying what looked like a modified virtual reality headset. "We've done it," he announced, breathless with excitement. This device should allow a human to safely experience the Axiom's energy gift as a sensory simulation. As Peter placed the headset over his eyes, he felt Zara's hand on his arm, a gesture of support that transcended species. The last thing he saw before the device activated was the shimmering form of the Axiom, pulsing with what he could have sworn was anticipation. The sensation that flooded Peter's mind defied description. Colors he had never imagined exploded behind his eyes. He felt as if he was simultaneously expanding to the size of a galaxy and contracting to a subatomic particle. Information and emotions not meant for human comprehension cascaded through his consciousness. When the experience ended, Peter found himself on his knees, gasping for breath. The atrium was silent, every being present holding their breath. Slowly, Peter rose to his feet, his legs shaky but his eyes bright with wonder. The holographic being seemed to glow brighter at Peter's words. "And we thank you, humans and allies, for your trust and openness. Perhaps there is more that binds us than separates us." As Peter removed the headset, he saw Ambassador Hawthorne deep in conversation with the Galactic Council representatives. The ambassador turned to Peter, a look of cautious optimism on his face. "The Council is impressed with how we've handled this situation," Hawthorne said quietly. "They're convening an emergency session to discuss fast-tracking Earth's membership application. And they want you there, Peter, as Earth's official youth ambassador." Peter's head spun with the implications. He looked around the atrium, at Zara sipping her coffee, at Jake standing vigilant with his mixed-species security team, at Dr. Blackwood and his colleagues already excitedly discussing the possibilities of the Axiom's energy. In that moment, Peter realized that this was just the beginning. Earth's journey into the galactic community was accelerating faster than anyone could have predicted. As he prepared to address the crowd once more, Peter knew that the real challenges and the real adventures were only just beginning. "Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all species," he announced, his voice carrying across the atrium and to the billions watching, "we stand at a moment of unprecedented galactic unity." He gestured to Zara, who stepped forward, her mandibles still glistening with coffee. "Ambassador Zara, would you share your experience with us?" Zara's translator clicked to life as she spoke. "It's incredible," she exclaimed, her eye stalks quivering with excitement. "The complexity of flavors, the warmth, the subtle energizing effect. It's unlike anything in Lurian cuisine." A ripple of excitement passed through the crowd as the other Lurian volunteers nodded in agreement, their own cups clutched in their appendages. The simple act of sharing a beverage had bridged an interstellar divide. The holographic form of the Axiom pulsed with what seemed to be curiosity. "Your enthusiasm for this substance intrigues us," the being's voice resonated. "We too have a culturally significant beverage. Perhaps an exchange is in order?" With a shimmer of light, a glowing, iridescent liquid materialized in the center of the atrium. It hovered in a perfect sphere, defying gravity. "This is the essence of our sustenance," the Axiom explained. "Distilled from the heart of a neutron star, it contains the very building blocks of the universe." Dr. Blackwood stepped forward, his eyes wide with scientific wonder. "Fascinating. If you could transmit its molecular structure, we might be able to synthesize a version safe for human consumption." The Axiom's form flickered in what Peter interpreted as agreement. Suddenly, Dr. Blackwood's handheld device lit up with an influx of data. The scientist's fingers flew over the screen, his team gathering around him in a flurry of activity. "This is extraordinary," Dr. Blackwood muttered, his voice filled with awe. The complexity of this substance, it's like nothing we've ever encountered. For several tense minutes, the scientists worked feverishly. The crowd waited in hushed anticipation, the only sound the soft whir of holographic cameras capturing every moment. A shimmering liquid, nearly identical to the Axiom's offering, materialized in a glass on a nearby table. Peter knew what he had to do. "In the spirit of interstellar cooperation," he said, stepping forward, "I volunteer to be the first to try this remarkable substance." Peter lifted the glass, acutely aware of the billions of eyes upon him. The liquid seemed to dance in the light, tiny motes of energy swirling within it. He took a deep breath and raised the glass to his lips. It's like tasting starlight," Peter gasped, his eyes wide with wonder. The depth of flavor, the energy coursing through it, it's indescribable. The Axiom's form pulsed brightly. "Your reaction brings us joy, young human. We are pleased our offering resonates with your species." What had begun as a simple coffee tasting had transformed into an impromptu galactic cultural exchange. Inspired by the sharing between humans, Lurians, and the Axiom, representatives from other species began to come forward. A gelatinous Blorxian offered a sample of their bioluminescent nectar. A crystalline Zinthar shared the recipe for their resonance crystals, which produced haunting melodies when vibrated. Even the normally reserved Vulpexi presented a holographic recreation of their sacred hunting ritual. Dr. Blackwood and his team worked tirelessly, adapting the compatibility serum in real time to allow for safe sampling of these exotic substances. The atrium became a whirlwind of activity, filled with exclamations of delight and wonder as beings from across the galaxy experienced each other's cultures in the most intimate way possible, through taste and shared experience. Peter's jaw dropped. "Already? But I thought the process would take months, if not years." Hawthorne clapped him on the shoulder. "The success of this cultural exchange, combined with how we handled the Axiom's arrival, has convinced the Council of Earth's readiness. Your quick thinking and diplomacy played no small part in this, my boy." As if on cue, a holographic projection of the Galactic Council chambers appeared above the crowd. The assembled representatives of 1,000 worlds stood in unison, their voices joining in a harmonious declaration. "We welcome Earth as a full member of the Galactic Council. May this mark the beginning of a new era of cooperation and understanding." The atrium erupted in cheers, the sound echoed by billions across the galaxy. Peter felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of the moment. Another figure approached, Dr. Petrova, her eyes shining with excitement. "Peter, Zara, you won't believe this. The Galactic Council has just pledged full support for the Harmony Project. Our joint human-alien team will have all the resources we need to begin terraforming efforts immediately." The implications of this offer were staggering. Peter's mind reeled at the possibilities. Exploration of distant galaxies, near instantaneous travel between worlds, a true united galactic community. As the event drew to a close, Peter found himself standing on stage beside Zara. Without thinking, he reached out and took her hand, or rather, her equivalent of a hand. The gesture felt natural, a symbol of the bridges being built between their species. The atrium erupted in a spectacular display of fireworks and holographic projections, celebrating Earth's full integration into the galactic community. The image of humans and aliens standing side by side, sharing in each other's cultures, was broadcast across the cosmos. As the festivities continued around them, Peter turned to Zara, his eyes bright with the promise of the future. "So, Ambassador," he said with a grin, "ready for our next adventure?" Zara's mandibles clicked in what Peter had come to recognize as a smile. "Lead the way, Peter. The galaxy awaits."
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.